There's easier ways to do this, but like, there's a lot of junk in the way too, but like...
I am a member of the Queensland Rover Scouts, scouting for people who tick over 18 but get too attached to leave. 2 years ago, when I was a Venturer Scout, I went on a 4-wheel driving camp out to Birdsville. We travelled from Brisbane, parallel to the Queensland-New South Wales border, all the way to the start of the Simpson Desert and all the way back. And my goodness, what an experience. I've never had more fun in my entire life. I'd never gone off-road before this, so to have my first experience with the dirt be something of this scale, even just as a passenger, well, it left something of an impression. Eventually, after 10 long days of sitting in a car while someone else did all the hard work, it was time to say goodbye, as we went back to our regular lives. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted more.
There's definitely easier ways to get back here. Like, the way I can walk through these things, the handrests. There's just stuff in the way that I don't want to move, that you can't see because of my clever camera positioning.
It's been a year and a half. I finished high school and a similar 4-wheel driving expedition is being talked about again. Here's a quick layout of our trip. Feel free to pause and take a better look. Our 4-wheel driving adventure was to start in Brisbane, taking us to all 3 southwestern corners of the state of Queensland. We were to camp at iconic locations like the Burke & Mills Dig Tree and Purple Corner. But the highlight of the trip was to be Birdsville, for some fun in the dunes. Other notable mentions are Batuta Pub, Nindigully Pub, and the Eromanga Dinosaur Museum. But more on all this later. I am old enough to drive a car all by myself at this point. Well, not an opens license, but old enough that I could drive in this trip. We need to get a good off-roader. And fast. Second-hand was not an option. The budget is another thing. 4-wheel driving is a fantastic recreational activity, but one that drains the wallet at an alarming rate, with the prices of mods and accessories. So we would have preferred to start with a car that didn't require a second mortgage. To that end, one immediately thinks of the Suzuki Jimny, a perky little toy car, a dream to park and a beast off the road. Oh yeah, that price doesn't seem as attractive anymore. It may be worth looking at a Toyota or a Ford or a Mits. Oh my. At this point, something like the GWM was the only feasible option. And by that, I mean just a Cannon. That tank isn't looking too cheap either. But the Cannon is a ute. Ute from utility vehicle, but we aren't utilitarian people. My family's needs work best with a closed-in SUV. To be clear, the Cannon is actually a very decent vehicle, but the lack of a sealed and lockable cargo space just brings problems that we had no experience facing, having never been ute owners. At this stage, it felt like what we wanted to buy had an overly inflated price tag, and anything that was affordable felt like a compromise. Living in New Delhi, my parents and I both grew up around Scorpios. This absolute icon has dominated Indian roads since 2002, and for good reason. The Scorpio, along with its bare-bones cousin the Bolero, has become synonymous with ruggedness and durability. It is the go-to vehicle for the remote mountains and deserts, both in terms of handling the terrain with ease and the availability of spare parts and knowledge of local mechanics. You see these things everywhere, especially as the road gets worse. Unfortunately, according to modern standards, this thing is ridiculously uncomfortable. It's quite unsafe, it's got no creature comforts, no features worth mentioning. Certainly not an option even worth considering. It feels like a box with 4 wheels designed to be abused, and nothing more. Wait, this one kinda looks nice though. Enter the brand new Scorpio N. I won't waste your time familiarizing you with the car. This isn't a review. Instead, I'm going to tell you about my experience with it in the harsh outback environment.
Quick side note, you may be wondering, hey, what's going on? It's been a year since your expedition. Why is the video coming out now and not last year? Well, as I was saying, I've had the chance to use this car as a daily driver over the course of that full year. about the opportunity to see what the impact of such a grueling outback trip would be on a car that needs to run every single day to support the needs of a full family. And I must say, no issues so far. It's been 24,000 kilometers total. Furthermore, this also gave us the chance to take it in for its 20,000 kilometer service to Toowoomba, Mahindra. It's a lovely place with a lot of helpful and friendly faces. And while there, we happened to spot this, an official Mahindra bull bar for the Scorpio.
Since we never camped in the same location more than one night in a row, we had to constantly carry all our supplies with us. For this trip, Dad and I were carrying clothes to last us both for 10 days, as well as toiletries, basic first aid equipment and cutlery. We were also carrying 2 camp chairs, 2 tents, 2 air mattresses, 2 full-size pillows, a sleeping bag and some blankets, because it does get reasonably cold out there during the night. Furthermore, we were to always have 20 litres of spare drinking water on us, which took the form of 2 10-litre jerrys in the boot. Over and above all of this, we were to carry personal equipment of any and all youth members in our car, which could range anywhere from a compact duffel bag to multiple hiking packs and giant tent bags. The boot, while much smaller than other cars in the class, fits all this with relative ease. Most of the time. Sometimes it would pile higher than the seats, making it a hazard that could fly around the car during any particularly rocky off-road segments. We didn't remove the third row of seats, although this is very easy to do and adds a lot of extra space. This did hinder our capacity a fair bit, but provided a wall between the cabin and the boot that the captain's seats could not provide on their own, due to the gap between them.
We also carried some basic gear in this little crate that fit neatly between the 2 captain seats. Tire repair kit, Velcro strap, windscreen repair kit, pump for the air mattresses, crateception. I'll wrap this one up first. The USB wire, what? And lots of pegs. In the smaller crate, duct tape. This stuff. This is good. Zip ties are very useful. A bunch of multi-tools. Yes. And super glue. As an added bonus, the lid, makes a nifty little tray with raised edges so your stuff doesn't roll off. I couldn't find any fire extinguisher brackets that were designed to fit inside the Scorpio, so we bought a small CO2 fire extinguisher from Bunnings, which fit perfectly in the door bin of the front seats. The recovery shackle, compact air compressor, quickie deflator, and other such tools and accessories stowed away quite nicely under the boot floor. You would have probably noticed by now that this isn't nearly enough preparation for the kind of outback trip that's being proposed here, but that's the advantage of traveling in a convoy. There's enough gear between everyone. This particular convoy had 11 cars. Our Mahindra Scorpio was accompanied by a Nissan Patrol, a Ford Ranger and an Everest, a Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, a Toyota Prado, 2 Toyota Hiluxes,
And 3 Toyota Land Cruisers.
One of which was a heavily modified dual-cab ute. Over half the cars on the trip were Toyotas. Certainly makes sense. Everybody trusts that Toyota reliability. I would like to now bring up that by this point in 2023, my only four-wheel driving experience had been, well, a couple of easy dirt tracks, a night drive, and a simulated snatch strap recovery. All in really easy terrain. So for me, the road ahead seemed pretty tricky. Eventually, we started off. Right off the bat, the car is very comfortable on the road. Not only compared to the previous Scorpio, but to a lot of other four-wheel drive wagons currently on the market. From the high-quality tarmac on the highways leading west from Brisbane, to the single-lane and largely under-maintained roads out in the desert, the suspension and tuning makes it a dream on and off the highway. And the seats support you well for extended periods of time.
Especially if you're in business class.
The infotainment is well designed, and the digital instrument cluster is easy to navigate, whether in hectic traffic or a tricky off-road trail.
Although, the lack of wireless Android Auto is quite inconvenient, since the spacing is quite odd with the wire here. The cabin isn't noisy either, and it comes with a sunroof. Well, kind of half sunroof? Moonroof? It has the option, which is nice. The drive is smooth, and the engine feels good.
I'm gonna stop right there. Clearly, I don't know enough about cars to effectively communicate anything more to you. But the point I'm trying to make is that this thing is pretty good for long road trips and expeditions like this. It's quite comfortable, you know. It's good. 10 out of 10, recommend.
Dirt tracks that are frequently used by heavy vehicles offer a special kind of inconvenience. Corrugations. Very basically, corrugations form when dirt roads are repeatedly used by cars. The tires cause displacement of the dirt, sand, or whatever other material. Eventually, the material settles in stable corrugated patterns. Corrugations are obviously not good for a car. It can loosen bolts and bits that are stuck onto the chassis, as well as overworking the shock absorbers, just to name a few reasons. And I don't know, there's something about constantly rattling the electronics abundant and over-engineered nightmares that modern cars have turned into. Traveling at a higher speed can mitigate most of the discomfort and vibration, but it makes it harder to keep track of road hazards like sharp rocks and large potholes, of which there were many. High speed also reduces traction a lot, since the smoother ride means the tires are only in contact with the tops of the bumps and spend less time actually on the ground. It's a trade-off, where neither option feels like a complete winner. Nevertheless, the suspension was not only up to the task, but made the whole experience enjoyable.
I would also like to add that the Scorpio's recommended cold tire pressure for tarmac is about 34 psi. For the dirt, I dropped it to about 26. This felt like a reasonable pressure. That almost scratched the paint. Maybe that was like not worth the gag, guys.
Now we get to the section you have all been waiting for. Sitting less than 40 kilometers from Birdsville, Big Red, or Napanerica, is the largest red sand dune in the world, and is the gateway to the world's longest parallel sand dunes, the Simpson Desert. We got to the staging area and began airing down. There had been some memorable experiences up till this point, but everyone was here for the dunes, myself included. Sand requires a much lower tire pressure, where about 26 psi was adequate for the dirt. I went down to about 17 or 18 to give myself a fighting chance. This four-wheel drive adventure came at an interesting time. On March 16, 2023, two Mahindra Scorpios crossed the Simpson Desert. Like all of it. And set a world record while doing so too. 13 hours and 21 minutes. Less than 14 hours to cross 385 kilometers of grueling, intense terrain in ridiculously high temperatures and unforgiving sun exposure. Over 1,000 sand dunes.
Easy.
And so it began. Big Red didn't even bat an eye. Nemesis didn't even break a sweat. The third one, I couldn't find names for any of the other ones. The Scorpio ate its way through anything thrown at it. We all know Big Red isn't the most challenging climb, but Nemesis catches you out, hence the somewhat imposing name. But in front of this car, all I had to do was whack it into 4 low, effectively reducing this menacing obstacle into a cakewalk. Yippee! The dunes kept coming and the Scorpio kept pushing through. I will admit, this thing is not an indomitable tank. There were more than a few occasions where I had to reverse down the dune and give it another go, or try a different line altogether, but I feel like that's permissible. More to the point, never once did it get stuck or bogged in the sand. I never had to be recovered for the duration of the trip. I will say, however, that I've somewhat altered the way the bumper attaches to the car, making it loose on one side and squeezed together on the other. The effect of constantly ramming the front into hard sand? Possibly a solid case to pull this off and slap a bull bar on?
At this point, I'd like to point out that this car has been running stock, highway terrain, MRF tires the entire time. And it's still running those tires 16,000 kilometers and about a year later. I've practically driven it out of the showroom and onto the dunes, and there have been no issues.
Well, except one.
If I've been painting a very rosy picture of this car, then dear viewer, I want to apologize for misleading you. You see, in this consumerist world we humans have created for ourselves, no purchase is without regret. And this was no different. Okay, that's a tad dramatic. While what I've told you about the reliability and the capability of this car so far has been the truth, it's not been the whole truth.
Modern cars are abundant with complicated electronics, and they rely quite heavily on sensors. The Scorpio is a prime example of this. Just through the dash, I can access accurate sensor readouts of fuel, tire pressure, and AdBlue. Yes, that's right, the Mahindra Scorpio takes AdBlue. It has a 20-litre tank, which is meant to last between 15 and 20,000 kilometers. We hadn't faced any issues with this as of yet, but there's something about constantly rattling a car that seems to have an effect on the electronics bolted to its insides. On the 25th of September, just 3 days into the trip, we got a curious message on the dash. After a bit of digging through the manual, we found it to be a warning. Extremely low levels of DEF fluid, or AdBlue. This meant that if we turned the car off, the onboard computer would not allow it to turn back on unless it detects some AdBlue in the tank. This was a problem, as our destination that night was a remote campsite by the name of Murdy Murdy. We decided that the best course of action would be to first reach our campsite, as nighttime was not far away, and then figure out our game plan. Once we reached, we were treated to a stunning outback sunset, but the DEF issue was weighing too heavily on our minds by then. The car was left running for the duration of the troubleshooting, which was a number of hours, so as to not risk completely shutting it down. But now, what to do?
But the hose might be better. Can I try that?
Yeah, bloody hell. It's designed for diesel and fuel and stuff.
Oh, beautiful. This is Mark. He had brought his Ford Everest to the trip, a car that also needs AdBlue to run. Mark thought of something quite smart. If it was a lack of AdBlue that was causing this issue, how about we give the Scorpio some AdBlue to make it happy? He was trying to figure out a way to siphon some AdBlue out of his tank and into ours.
And it's softer, so it might even sort of turn.
I go any further than that.
Don't think we'll get any.
It's the wrong way, unfortunately. No good?
Okay. Let me have a think.
But unfortunately, this wasn't gonna work. He briefly considered removing his AdBlue tank altogether so we could simply pour it out, but I feel like that's not a feasible option.
Can we try and get in contact with Mahindra using a satellite phone or something?
Got two guys who got bloody Starlink here. You can do a
Video call.
Do a Wi-Fi call or something. Yep.
That'd be worth it.
Yep. Call Mahindra. Yep. All right.
Chat and one of the check out.
Over here. So Nathan's got Starlink and Guy's got Starlink. So I definitely think you should give Mahindra a call.
Problem solved. With network coverage available, Dad got on the phone with Mahindra customer service. Unfortunately, the closest RACQ service vehicle to us at the time was about 450 kilometers away. At this point, a more feasible idea was proposed.
Somebody can get up early in the morning and go to the... No, I'm just... What are the practical, real-world options?
I'm so sorry, I was under the impression this was a tank full.
No, Marnie told me you guys checked it all. So yeah, no stress. That's all part of it, mate. You won't be the only one. Don't worry. So the options are you can just turn it off in the morning. Somebody gets up early, and you just drive up there and make it early, and bring it back. That's an option. But they don't open. We'll have to check what time they open.
I contacted Inaminka Trading Post to ask whether they had any AdBlue in stock. A great idea proposed to me by Brett, this trip's organizer. Eventually, we decided to head to Inaminka that very night, and using the shortest route possible. This is Guy. He led us all the way to Inaminka in the dead of night through the Strzelecki Desert. He then set up camp alongside us around 11 PM, and then got up at 4 AM the following morning, and drove the entire way back so he could rejoin the rest of the expedition. He was, at no point, tired. What? How? Crazy strength. Once we reached, we finally turned the Scorpio off and tried turning it back on, to see if the error message was true to its word.
Ready?
Okay, don't like that. The following morning, we walked over to the trading post and bought 15 litres of AdBlue, leaving one bottle in case someone else might need some before the next shipment came through. We poured one full bottle, so 5 litres, into the AdBlue tank and tried turning the car on. Interesting. 79% would mean that the tank is now up to 15.8 litres. Since we added only 5 litres, the tank would have already had 11.8 litres sitting inside it, yet the readings showed nothing. And I don't mean it showed an empty tank or near empty tank, it showed nothing. No reading. The percentage reading is not present in the top right corner and there's no green illustration on the bar here. It also continued to give inconsistent readings, but only at specific times during the drive. It would only play up when we were driving over Corrugations and the car was rattling quite a bit. Never any other time. This series of pictures shows the inconsistent AdBlue level readings. Note the odometer reading in the bottom to verify chronological order. This is the same readings, but as a graph, to show you how AdBlue readings fluctuated while kilometers increased consistently. This issue has not returned since, and the car has now clocked up over 23,000 kilometers. My theory is that the DEF sensor gets a bit silly when the car experiences consistent and strong rattles and bumps for an extended period of time, like driving on Corrugations for 2 days straight, highlighting a crucial QC issue. If any Scorpio owners watching this have experienced anything similar, please comment down below and tell me how you dealt with it. The biggest problem though, by far, is the crippling lack of cup holders in the car.
Apart from these door bins, which can't support open cups for obvious reasons, there's only one cup holder in the entire car. Whoop. This is like in the mirror. Line it up, get your face in the shot. Kinda sketch. Kinda irritating.
This is not nearly enough, especially on a long and isolated expedition like this. It really starts to get to you when the wireless charger only fits one phone, so now you're juggling your phone, a second bottle, and a handheld radio because your door bin has a fire extinguisher in it because you always carry a fire extinguisher on things like these. This, while it may seem trivial, made things extremely difficult in a long drive with 2 drivers.
Now, obviously, I can't claim to know the engineering underneath, because I don't. But all of this just seems like really poor layout choices, with a really easy fix.
Comparing this setup to the rear-wheel drive version of the Scorpio available in India, you can see that the second cup holder is positioned where the 4-wheel drive mode selector cluster is now. They just swapped out one for the other. Fear not though, there is a cheap and easy way to implement a makeshift workaround to this. Introducing...
For $5, you can get this little doohickey to give you an extra cup holder.
This issue extends to the middle row of seats too. I also feel like they could definitely just have molded 2 cup holders in the floor right here. Nothing too elaborate, just something deep enough to support a regular bottle. Major critique? The sensors can really use some tightening. This seems like a QC issue straight out of the factory, but light 4-wheel driving in a vehicle designed for heavy 4-wheel driving should not be jerking loose essential sensors like the AdBlue tank indicator. But it's fine. This was a rarely occurring issue, happening only in specialized environments. 1 in 1,000 chance. Major compliments? It's the ideal car for a beginner with no history or experience with 4-wheel driving. That doubles up as a really effective daily use car for families. The seats and suspension are well designed, making long and bumpy journeys go by quite comfortably, while the 4-wheel drive system is reliable and beyond capable. It's more fuel efficient than practically all its better-known competitors, and the engine is steady and quiet. A near perfect all-rounder by my standards that more than caters for your day-to-day requirements, and proved that it could keep up with the hardcore rigs when the situation called for it. It definitely has its drawbacks, but hopefully this video has been able to deliver an in-depth and impartial account, leaving you with enough information to draw your own conclusions.
This video was my first attempt ever at making something like this. So comment down below and let me know of things that you liked about it, or things that you think I should have covered that I didn't cover, or things you'd like to see in the future, or things that I can improve on, or just anything. Like, tell me what you ate for breakfast yesterday. I don't know, man. Also, stay tuned. More content to come. More things happen. And also, I'm gonna do a lot more stuff on here as much as I can. So stay tuned. Also, I apologize for the bad mic quality. I tried them indoors. They worked. I'm here outdoors. But it's fine. I'm sure post-production I can do something. Thank you. Bye-bye. No, like this stuff. I should have planned this better. Just trust me. Like, look at this. There's like passage here. I'm obstructing it with stuff. It's fine. It's my fault. Don't worry about it, man.